Hey, welcome everybody to today's Leica conversation. This is the first of a series of talks that we have planned for this year, 2023. And we're looking forward to the return of monthly conversations. So I'm your host, John Kreidler, product specialist and Akademie instructor for Leica camera. And it's great to be with you, and I'm excited to be here and speak with today's guest in hopes that our conversation will bring some inspiration into your photographic journey. So first, let's do some house cleaning. We'd like you to use the Q&A. If you have questions for today's guest, please use the Q&A panel. I have colleagues who are monitoring that panel, and they will pass me those questions that we can ask of today's guest. Also, if you would, use the chat function to let us know where you're watching from. And it's always great to see a lot of friends from around the globe and to see where they are and where they're watching from. All right, so today's guest is our good friend, Tutes. He was born in Ecuador and raised in New York City. He has a phenomenal studio in Dumbo and is known for his intimate, warm, and energetic images. His approach is rooted in establishing a trust with his subjects that then enables him to create images that feel authentic and familiar. So on that, please join me in welcoming our guest today, Tutes. How's it going, Tutes?
Hey, John. How's it going? I feel
it's going.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. I'm really appreciate. I love that that you just did.
All right. Well, you know, it's exciting. You know, we've done projects, I guess, over the years, but this is the first time that we're kind of doing a talk to kind of tell people a little bit about kind of your photographic journey, which I think for a lot of the photographers that I work with, it's what I would say it wasn't the standard, standard journey, like starting in school and being a photographer. So why don't you take us back to, I guess, how you got your start, and what influenced you to kind of become a photographer?
It's definitely been a very journey for me, a long journey for me. Even though it's only been 9 years, it feels like it's been a lot longer. As you mentioned, I don't have like a background in photography. I didn't go to school for it. I was born in Ecuador, and I came here when I was about 10 years old, and I pretty much pursued that corporate life path. And I did that. I went to schooling for business and computer information systems, landed a great job in that field. And I did that for almost, for the following years in that corporate life for like 10 years as well. I will say that it's strange to me that even I find myself still like doing photography now, because it never crossed my mind at all when I came to the United States and I wanted to pursue a career in like the business world. It never really came up to me as an opportunity to even like entertain it. I wasn't surrounded by actual like creatives at all. I was surrounded by a lot of business, corporate people, a lot of people that were just into just sort of like just the business oriented life, like the 9-to-5 jobs. I really do feel that there was a instinct in me that wanted me to felt like it was a void. And I think that void was when my first child was born. and my daughter was pretty much the main influence for me to wanting to like actually purchase a camera. And that camera led on, literally, it got me like sparked a fire in me, and it made me feel alive again, just using that camera and creating images with her. I mean, for that first year, I couldn't stop wanting to create with the camera, and I felt truly inspired. It felt like I was a brand new person for some strange reason, and I wanted to sort of invest more time into that, and that's when it led me to wanting to like make a decision, going from corporate and seeing where I can leave corporate life and actually go into the creative aspect of what I felt fit for. But yeah, I think my daughter was definitely my main muse, my influence, the reasoning to get into photography initially, and I couldn't stop doing it. I just wanted to continue to do. I wanted to see how much further I can excel in this particular like skill set. It was just basically honing in a missing part of me that I felt like I wanted to just like feel more about it because it just felt so good, you know, John. I don't know if you feel that way.
Right. Well, yeah, I would agree as a parent, that definitely beginning to capture, particularly those early years, uh, is like a real jumpstart to someone to get into photography. Myself, I've always kind of been into photography and would do photography. So it just, for me, the difference was it was more accepted, I guess, that I took pictures
Mm,
instead of, oh, here's John with his annoying camera coming to annoy us. You know, da, da, da.
mm.
So, but anyway, you have an interesting a quote that you have next that talks a little bit about inspiration. And I would agree that Gregory Heisler is incredibly inspiring. But tell us how this quote kind of encompassed what you were feeling.
I think, yeah, this quote definitely nailed uh, a question that I felt in me. It was the whole concept of like, why didn't I feel like putting my camera down? Every single time I walked around when I was in corporate life, I always had the instinct to wanting to capture more. But I didn't come from a background from photography, obviously. I didn't know what was like the basics of it, or like what is it that I need to understand, or be a photographer. I just literally follow my instinct on wanting to capture certain moments, certain people, certain perspectives, certain angles, that I felt compelled. And I was watching this video, and this line, you know, really hit the mark as far as coming from somebody who I felt was a photographer, you know, a true established photographer. I felt like, wow, this is what it is then. Is this something that makes me want to be a photographer? Is this that instinct? Is this that feeling? Is this what it is that marks me more of trying to pursue this as a full-time career or a path that I need to take? And yeah, this particular message definitely pivot me into wanting to continue to become more interested and become more aware of how I can hone this little feeling of wanting to like shoot more images.
And then that led to images like this that
Right.
um, to me
Wow.
is very interesting as a first image. Like when you talk about what inspired you as a photographer and what began to grab you, what's the story with this image?
This was let me put some context into that. This was when I got into photography and I wanted to feel like feel more passion into it. I used to do a lot of like after work runs, like not runs, but just like I used to wander around so much in the city. And in knowing that I wanted to capture more, I started to notice the city and parts of the city that I can't believe I've never seen before, or kind of like felt like I was already in a new world, sort of in a new city, because I had brand new eyes opening to me. This was in Astoria Park, I believe. It was in Astoria Park. And I was walking through there, and it was probably one of like my first like sunsets or evening or sundowns that I was at the perfect time, at the perfect place, that I've never seen this before. And I decided to pull up my current, system that I had in there. And I decided to shoot this, but I realized that I wanted to, I kept playing with it, and I felt like I wanted to make it sort of like mysterious. And so I kind of put it in manual mode and to see how this works. And sometimes, when you're at night and I take off my glasses, you kind of see an image of silhouette. And I wanted to make it feel like a silhouette, because this is the only thing that makes me understand what I'm seeing. But when I take it off, I kind of have to sort of like analyze the silhouette of everything that's around me. And this felt more as a silhouette of a low light situation, and kind of created this nice little interesting image that I had. And it was one of the first images I was very proud of. And it was surprisingly, it was one of the images, this was one of the first images that I had people buy from me. And that was a huge
That's
milestone
awesome.
for me. Yeah, I wasn't really aware that
Yeah.
something like this, so natural to me, could be interesting for other people to have in their homes or on their little photo book albums, or just to display somewhere. So it definitely made me feel honored that other people appreciated this image as much as I did. So that was definitely gave me more validation, and that maybe I continue to just trust my instinct and trust my gut and just shoot whatever I feel like shooting. And hope, maybe people will see something that they haven't seen so long from New York City, that they felt compelled to like just wanting to like just hold it as a memory in their own way.
Right.
Wow.
Definitely. And of course, a lot of cool images in the weather by a lot of Leica photographers. So I mean, I think it's the next shot here that I really like.
I love that.
Tell us the story about that, because it's, if we think about your journey, right? You started, photographing your daughter, and then moving into just going around town with your camera and thinking initially, maybe abstractly, to create images. And now we have, something that is really strong street photography stuff.
This was one of those days that the more you start to shoot more often, like around the city, you want to capture certain different scenarios of the city, whether it's at night, whether it's raining, whether it's really sunny. This was, for some strange reason, New York City and the snow it does create some sort of winter wonderland. And at that time, I had created a small community of friends that were also like-minded as me. And we wanted to explore the city during a snowstorm. And we got together. And the interesting part of this shot is that I used to work literally a couple of streets down south of this from Radio City Hall in my corporate life. And I can't believe that I was here probably like a year maybe like during the first year, I probably left my corporate life and decided to commit to my full-time freelancing, photography career. This was probably that year that I'm going into it. And it gave me some sort of hindsight of like, I can't believe I'm here in the city when I used to come here all the time. And I never paid attention to this particular perspective of angle. Obviously the snow just kind of put a whole new different just concept of story in this particular avenue. And I had, but no, as I was shooting the city, as I was shooting, this one was pretty much shot with that time, like a camera phone. I didn't even want to like pull out my camera. And I think I'm gonna tell you why was the reason why I didn't pull out my camera. The biggest mistake I did was after a cold weather, you go inside a place and it it fogs up the lenses because of the warmth.
Fogs up, yeah.
And so now
Yeah.
I needed to go back out and let it defog. But I saw this shot and I couldn't wait it for the defog. So I just pull out my camera and shot it. And it's
Yeah.
not when I got home that I started to see these images that I shot with my phone. And I felt like, wow, I mean, I just didn't care what tool I used. I just wanted to keep this as a great memory for me. And
Right.
just understand that this is something that I probably will never be able to retake at all. You know, at this time, I don't know if it was at 12, I don't know if it was at 4 because it was so gloomy and I was out all day. But I don't care about timing. It doesn't really tell me. And I think one of the best things about this image is that's what it is. For me, it's timeless. You know, you don't know when it was shot. You know what years technically, what recent years and I felt like this could have been shot maybe like yesterday or the last snowstorm, if anything. So, and it just constantly reminds me of like how I used to work down the block from there, and I never realized that I would be here X amount years later, taking the shot, being back here doing this, you know,
Right.
at the same place.
Did you shoot much in black and white early on? I mean, I always, it's like you're saying, black and white images always look timeless. And, you know, I guess for a number of reasons, and a snow scene is very, in general, monochromatic.
Right.
You know, unless there's traffic lights that are really visible. I just wonder if with this image, it gave you the idea maybe to start to shoot more in black and white, or it was just kind of a passing thing.
I think that this image for me was perfect in black and white. I think that, yeah, I used to shoot a lot of colors, and you're right. This might be the first time that I felt compelled to make it black and white. A lot of people, I mean, most of the times that people, you know, go this route is mainly, sorry, give me 1 second, mainly because color can be a distraction in most places, but I love capturing people. At some point prior to this, I was definitely capturing a lot of people. And I think that's more for me color was more for people, and cityscapes were a little bit more for um, monochromatic, like monochrome colors. For me, it just makes me feel like there's you're with black and white. For me, it just creates space. Like, where do you want the attention to go to? Do you want it to go in the dark modes, or you want it to go on the light sides of the image? And I think there's just two perspectives there. And that's pretty much why I think this is for me, it makes it minimal, but there's a lot going on in that shot, honestly. So I didn't want no sort of colors being another aspect of this image to, you know, for people to try to like analyze the image. I kind of just want people to get lost in the scale of this, if anything.
Right. It definitely has a mood to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things. I mean, the recurring theme that I keep hearing is you trust your gut, you go with your instinct, and then that hopefully would lead to work that you would get paid to do. So this is I think one of your first campaigns in and around 2015 on Instagram.
Yeah.
Take us through, like, how did this come about, and what was it like shooting for a major brand like Range Rover?
Yeah, oh man, this is so much going on. I have to kind of like step back and kind of like refresh my memory on a lot of these things that I've done. Um, I remember that this was the first time, probably one of my first campaigns I shot on from a actually like big clientele, big client. This was through definitely one of these agencies that reached out to me and saw my images on Instagram, what I was putting out, and they really enjoyed the way I would shoot people and cities and my perspective and my angles. And they wanted me to use the same perspective for my images with their car. And I was like, okay, I have no clue how to shoot a car. I have no clue how do you talk to a car? You know, how do you tell a car, hey, I want you to move this way, or I want to put it this side? And I think that challenged me in one of the ways of trying to find a balance of feeling energy from a product that is just doesn't it's just a product, technically a still product, and how do I use the city to make it alive? And I think that's why I think that was the vision behind this particular project, is that Range Rover, they gave me the car for like a couple of days, and they told me, look, we just want you to capture this in the New York City life. And I drove around it, and I just kind of went to places where I felt like would be great to have this car in there. And this girl with the umbrella is actually somebody I met just through passing while I was like roaming the city. And I asked her if you would be okay to give some sort of like, if I can shoot you in the background with my car, to give it some sort of, like scale, and also some sort of like life to it, instead of just being the shot and just like a cityscape. And I think that created more of a story, if anything, with that particular perspective. And I would just see something and I just felt compelled to like just shoot it. And I think, again, going back to just trusting your gut, trusting on how many times you've been in a car, how many times you've seen certain perspectives. And I just went back to that and just gave this whole story through my own vision, through my own experiences of how I used to drive in the city, and how I used to just like use the car for my own experiences, and take that experience and just give it to them with their own product. And they really enjoyed it. And I think coming from that, they wanted me to also see how I can put a person in there and create how that product or that car can be part of their lifestyle. And how I would just literally meet these strangers, and I would just have to like understand why. Why do you love this product, or why do you love this car? And I needed to understand why this person really wanted to like have a Range Rover before anything. And I would have them sort of explain to me, what is it about this car that you love? If you sit here and I'm sitting here, what would you love? What is your favorite position? I would just take shots of them as I'm talking to them, and it created this whole sort of like energy of a person with their favorite vehicle. And they loved it. I think the agency really appreciated that I was able to make that approach and create this sort of like comfortness with either strangers or like a commissioned work. It just really worked well for them, for this particular campaign, especially.
Yeah, that's great. And then we have, I guess, this campaign, and again, this to me is, we're kind of seeing this evolution, right, of you as a photographer and honing skills, and now really using more point of view, and that kind of thing, because it is exercise and exercise equipment, which I know for myself is not super exciting. But you look at the dynamic of all these images, and you've really created a story. So how did you, I guess, how did you get connected with these folks, and what was the premise? Did they just say, Tutes, do your thing, or was it more directed? Or
I mean, to be honest, it's strangely enough, you wouldn't be surprised how many times I've heard that phrase from clients. Just do your and to me,
no
it's
greater
like,
praise.
what does that thing mean? What did you mean? This perfect example with this this was the owner of this particular I guess wheel tool, was a new product that he was launching, and he wanted to get these, he had these fitness people, real fitness people, not models at all. This was actually real life, working, fitness people, that he wanted to get them to use this as their product and include them in their like programs, in their fitness programs. So I'm like, I don't know anything about fitness. I really don't, but I do know things about people, whether you're like a dancer, a musician, a garbage man. There is some passion involved in what you do. There is some energy in there and excitement in what you do. So I literally just wanted to just, well, this is your product, right? I want to know what you would do with it. I want to know, how do you conduct a class with it? I would literally, and I just want to see what energy and how much time and effort you would put to show me, this type of stuff. And I would just kind of like watch them and then just see a perspective and an angle and just observe, because this was definitely one of the first times that I've ever been like around so many fitness like just clients or just personnel, that I didn't know what would be the best angle until I just kind of like let it evolve in its own and become its own ecosystem, and I try to merge in there. So I would initially want to like just observe them and just see them and just get acquainted with them and just ask them questions, to the point that they didn't care that I had a camera all up in their faces, that I would just continue to shoot. I see things, and again, it goes back to just following my gut. Eventually I provided all these images and the client loved it, and they use these images as part of their brochure, their marketing like tools, their website, that I felt very proud that this could really, for me, it's always the validation of the client feeling relieved and excited and meeting their expectation when it comes to like them wanting to hire me for something. There's always a sense of disappointment, or maybe feel like you haven't met, or you feel like you missed something. I think that's always, for me, it's always there, that I'm never 100% sure if I got the shots or I met a client's expectation. But it also, I love it because it keeps me on my toes as much as possible. It makes me want to continue to see something that I've missed. And I think that for me has always been sort of like the fire inside of me to want to continue to just be better at something, that even though I've never done it before, but I won't regret it if I give it my all, if anything. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Right.
I think in this career.
No, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think that is, for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's why they do what they do, is they're driven to work that way.
Yeah.
And always in search of validation. So it's really interesting to hear the story behind this. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to use the chat. We've got people looking at it, and let's see if we've got any questions. We've got let's see, a couple here. So Jack White asks, any tips for others that want to make the jump to working professionally?
Oof. Get ready.
You have an eight-part program.
Obviously,
No.
like, I think that I tell, when people ask me that all the time, like, what is that leap of faith that you need to do? I don't know if my rule can apply to everybody, obviously, because of their circumstances of life and stuff like that. But in my situation is that you got to work hard at the beginning. It's not going to be easy. If you really love what you do, you got to dedicate literally 24/7 in this particular field. And if there's anything that I would really, really tell people, is that don't get discouraged when you don't see yourself at a point where you felt like you need to be. I still don't know where I need to be, but I'm doing what I love to do. If you feel that every morning you wake up and your first thought is that I'm so happy that I'm doing what I'm doing, and then the rest comes, all the bills and all the issues and all the problems comes afterward, I think that's a good stepping stone, that you are where you're supposed to be at. For me, has always been that first thought, that I feel very pleased and very happy that I'm out there doing what I love to do, as my first thought, when my last thought and my first thought, honestly, and when it comes to my career. I think if that's something that you feel in you, I would say you got to give it your all. Network, be out there, talk. It's 90% legwork and 10% shooting, honestly. But that 10% shooting will get you the clientele that you want to work with, and that will give you the experience and knowledge of perseverance of continue doing what you're doing.
Well, we've got a question I think you've partially answered from Oscar Mendoza, I'm sorry, he goes, I know it's a process, but how did you go from shooting your daughter to shooting for Range Rover and Lincoln and Oprah? And we'll talk about Oprah, I think, in a bit, in such a small amount of time. It's that you're just that good, Toots? Is that?
No,
You're that driven?
I'm that driven. I think the
Yeah.
love of what I do. I didn't have a plan at all. What helped me get to that point is that I constantly put a lot of my work that I felt I was proud of into the world, whether it was through social media, whether it's through my website, whether it's just doing like free stuff. Um, and you create some sort of relationships with people, and they become technically your salespeople, your marketing people, because they start spreading your name out there, and it just becomes almost like a fire, that your name and your what you've been doing, it becomes out and it starts to spread. And I think at the beginning, it's basically that, me trying to meet and network and talk to people and put my images out there and work with them. Um, I'm still doing that to this day. I have not stopped. Um, and I think when the people see these images, the way that my personality is a combination of both, where they're like, wow, the way he sort of like is passionate about what he does, he puts it out there. And it creates some sort of trust with people, at least with my clientele, whether it was friends or even colleagues. Your colleagues are also a very important matter in this industry. I think creating these bonds with certain people, you learn a lot from them, but you could also confide in them in certain things that maybe only your colleagues can answer, and not the real world, or not the industry, or not the business. And I think that's where I would say help me put my name into people's ears that I would never be able to do on my own. So if anything, I say you keep talking to people, keep putting your images out there. Eventually, you're gonna have the right people come to you and like see your work and see the value you put in, and like the level of like passion and love that you have for it will make you want them to work for their brand and whatever it is that they want them to do. They want that same energy for their particular experience and brands. I hope that.
Gotcha. Hey, I think you've answered it. It's always going to be a challenge, and yeah, a big part of it is drive. Part of it's connection. Part of it is, the luck you make through hard work, and that kind of thing. So it's all, I mean, I think it's all good information. And it's, these things, no matter who the photographer is, right? It's not secret sauce. It's
No.
a lot of hard work that goes into it. So we do, yeah. There's no preset download that you can buy for $29.95. No.
Wish.
All right, we do. I have an. We have, yeah, wish. So we have another question from our friend Victor Grandier, who's asking, can you recall approximately how many images you would shoot for, say, a campaign, and what was the accept rate? Like what, like 1 in 10, 1 in 20, or you just shot 10 images and they love them all?
No. I mean, not initially, obviously. I think this is something that I've learned, that you kind of have to like talk to them part of the process before you start shooting. And for me, it was, well, what would be the ultimate goal of images, total images you would want to have to use? Some people would say, oh, I want 50. Okay, you're telling me that all 50 you would put on a billboard. So I would tell them, I was like, I have no problem giving you a lot of images, but you tell me, if you're telling me that you're only going to use like 10 images to like fully run this campaign, then those 10, whatever I surround those 10 images around, you're going to get a lot of selections from those. So I would definitely create a body of work during those campaigns where it can range from like 50 or 100 for my own personal, like my own personal like relief of saying that I have enough. And then from there, I'll just kind of like go back to the client and be like, so understanding the mission and the what is the objective of this whole shoot, and kind of use that as a base to see which images align with that. And so there's a level of understanding whether you want to come in the middle, like for me, it's just trying to be always talking to the client, letting them know there's like a transparency when it comes to like your process of work. If they approve the way you work, then chances are they're going to be fine with whatever images you provide them. So I can't guarantee you there's going to be 50 great images. I can guarantee you that you're going to have enough to create a body of work that represents your brand, if anything, whether it's 10, whether it's 20, whether it's 40. But I'm going to tell you that you're going to have the images that you're looking for that represents what you're trying to, message out there regarding your brand. And this is something that you talk to clients, I think this is just something that you learn as you go. And just when you do shooting and overshooting, you're kind of double guessing yourself. When you shoot a shot and you say to yourself, wow, this is a great shot, stop there. Don't continue to be better at that shot. If you see that you got it, move on to the next angle, perspective, or person. If you feel like you got that shot, trust your gut and be like, this is great. I'm not going to move forward from this. I'm done with this. And let's move over to the next one. Otherwise, I feel like you get to a point where you stop being creative. Your creativity starts to slow down and you just become very bored, if anything.
Right. Well, you've got a great quote. It's hard to love what you do if you don't love what you make. And how does that overall, I guess that quote, how does that fit into your overall scheme of things when you're working as a photographer?
I think that a lot of people in the industry, when they start off, they're so overwhelmed with trying to be good at everything, trying to make a name for themselves in every angle, in every category. For me, at least, I was in that route where I wanted to just be good at so many things. And I caught myself at a situation where I was like, I feel like what I'm doing right now, I left the corporate world because I hated my job to fulfill a passion because it was making me happy. It got to a point where I felt like everything that I was doing, all these like campaigns and jobs, really I was more catered to wanting to shoot for them than wanting to shoot for me. And so I got to a point where I started to question a lot of my clientele of what they wanted me to do instead of what I wanted to do, ultimately, at the end of the day. And I felt kind of sad that I was being hired to be a service, if anything, and I wanted to start doing more work that I was more proud of, that represented more of what I wanted to do, and unlike my personal projects with people, dedicate more time with like just being connected with actual individuals, if anything. And I wanted to start to like expand in my network and start to reach other forms of like work. And I think that at some point I started to be like, well, I got to start saying no instead of just saying yeses to everything and leave. And I decided that with those no's, the more I started saying no's, the more room I had for trying to work on what I wanted to do. And so I would now have to shift into a whole new realm of audience when it came to almost like commercial work. And I think I started to really do a lot more like more team effort type of like images where it involved more than just me. It involved me and a team in general, and wanted to like entertain that as a process of my work moving forward, which led me to like produce a lot better images, commercial size images, a little bit more bigger campaigns. And I think it just became to a point where you want to fulfill something that's in your mind and your heart that you want to just pursue and maybe accomplish it and see where that leads. And I think that's where I feel that if I don't love what I'm doing, then I got to start doing what I want to, like what I love to do. I don't want this to be a job. I
Right.
never wanted this to feel like a job. So
And then what are you going to do when Oprah calls, and says, hey, Toots, can you
I
come
think
out to the show? Can
I
you
would, but I
shoot some
would tell her,
BTS?
I
Would you
would tell
work
her,
with her?
oh my God. Oprah was a great experience. I think that was the first time that I felt like validated me as a form of like being a photographer for sure. This was another pivotal point in my life that I felt their marketing team approached me because of the images I was putting out on Instagram or on my portfolio. They used my images to like put it on their mood boards to present to Oprah. And Oprah was like, yes, I love him. Let's do this. And they flew me out and they wanted me to literally just be out there doing what I do normally with people and capture these like nice moments and content that they will use for their social media. It was it was definitely surprising at the beginning, but knowing that when I was there, that I didn't really was pressured to do anything outside of my norm or outside of what I'm comfortable with, made me feel like I was here for the perfect reason. And I think that can show in your presence when you're talking to her, when you're like talking to the production team, talking to their, all their just her personnel, that how excited I was here because I was doing something that I love to do regardless. It's not like you gave me a shot list. Hey, I want you to do it like this. I want you to use this shot and make it the same as that shot. And no, they didn't give me none of that. They gave me full creative freedom. And I did that for almost
Wow.
a whole year. Like this was from 2015 to 2016. Um,
Wow.
I was very happy with that whole experience. I kind of wish I knew what I know now to use this information to put it back then. I would be in a whole
Right.
different place for sure.
Well, I think it's really cool that from what you're saying, that validation of Oprah saying, yes, I love these images.
Yeah.
I mean, what photographer wouldn't want to hear that from any client, you know, and then yet to hear it from Oprah? I mean, that had to be like a magical, a magical time for you.
Oh, I was nervous all the way until probably into the fourth day of shooting or being around her presence. I started to become more comfortable. Um, coming again, going back to me not being a photographer or knowing anything about photography or not having anyone to actually like mentor me or tell me what are the things I should do. Um, when I went into set, there was already another photographer there, honestly, but he was doing like
Hmm.
PR stuff and he's been working with this person. But I didn't want to come in there like I'm trying to replace anybody. I wanted to just also be part of a team playing environment. And I approached the photographer and I asked them, please tell me like if there's anything, if I'm in your way, or if I'm telling you, if I'm doing things that's going to cause you not to have your shots, please let me know. This is your space and I don't want to intervene in anything. I'm just here to document whatever I can around you guys. And I think that created a nice bond and relationship with not just the photographer, but also the lighting team, the production team, the marketing team, that they felt like I wasn't there trying to like change anything. I was there to actually do something that can elevate the work and as well as partner with them in trying to get all the shots that Oprah wanted ultimately.
Right. Yeah, that's great. So we do have another question from the audience. They want to know, Toots, what's your Leica story? How did you come to Leica and shoot our
So
cameras?
obviously, a lot of people used to tell me, "Oh, you've ever shot with a Leica?" I was like, "No, I haven't shot with a Leica. This is early in my career." And I think that this probably happened at, I would say the first time I ever held a Leica was at Photoville. Um, and I picked it up and I remember it was an M9 with with a Knock Deluxe nine a 50
Zero
oh
nine five.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, after that, how can you really not be in love with photography at that point with the Leica system? I shot heavily, and I think that was the first time I ever shot in manual mode or with a with a rangefinder in general. I've never ever held a camera like that, and I was saddened that I had to give it back. But it
Many people are, but we appreciate it when people do give them back when we loan them cameras,
but it
particularly
felt
a photo bill. That's a great,
even
allows us
after
to
like
keep doing that
X,
kind of thing.
oh my God. I mean, but giving it back, it felt like I was giving back my child to somebody else and not, I want it back. And that feeling never went away. And I literally told myself one day I will own a Leica. I will work on having that as part of my arsenal, if anything. And it took a
Mhm.
time. You know, my first purchase camera was a M240. And then I bought just the body to eventually save up for a lens. And it took me a year to save up for a lens. And I finally got a 35, 1.4. And I was just like, okay, I used this camera. I actually shot with the M240 and the 35 Summicron or Summilux. And I did like probably a lot of personal projects with that. And I shot probably like 3 campaigns with it. And even though it
Oh,
was a
wow.
manual system, I really felt really proud, and the client felt really proud of it, of what the images came. And I think that was, for me, the reasoning for me wanting to really just stick with Leica as much as possible as my only system at all at some point. And eventually I
And
just,
what are you, yeah, what are you using now? The SL2S or
I have the
SL2?
SL2 with the 2490, and
Okay,
I also have M6 with the 35,
okay,
and I also have a Leica Q2.
wow.
Those
Do you
are
have any
my,
of those babies next to you, or I know you're using the SL2 as a webcam,
yeah.
which does an awesome job.
I love this camera. I knew that once I got a hold of this one, it especially does great for what I do. Um Anything that I've shot so far with this camera has hit everything that I wanted to when it comes to whether it's a personal project or a campaign or clientele or even just like random family events. This, for me, it hits every aspect. I don't see that I need anything else. If I would have had any other bodies around, it would just be collecting dust, unfortunately. It would just be like, why do I have this? It's just not worth it. But yeah,
Wow.
I'm in love with this SL right now, SL2, and I can't get enough of it at this point.
Well, that's great to hear. That's
Yeah.
great to hear. You have another interesting quote. We always talk, I guess, really more so since the pandemic about the art of the pivot.
Mm.
And you say a shift happens. Staying in one place dulls my creative mind. Tell us a little bit about that. What do you mean, and what are you doing to kind of change things up?
I think I'm a person that doesn't like to be complacent too much. Um, I'm very I'm very intrigued and interested in how do I get better. Um, if I feel like I've met the level that I needed to meet at a certain stage in my life, whether I'm shooting, let's say, commercial work, or I'm shooting, portraiture or low lighting situations, or like with flash or whatever it is, and I feel like I need to get better at something else, or I feel like I've been lacking trying to put effort into trying to learn some sort of new thing about in the form of photography. Um, I feel like I need to test that to see if it does bring me um, sort of like that passion fire that photography has always done. Anytime I've done like new things with it. Um, and I think there has always been a point in my life when I come into a point where I have to question, is this all I can do? Is this all I'm capable of doing? Is this something that have I reached my limit? And I think that for me is an answer that it's a question that I always need to answer. And if I need to like start doing analog, if I need to start doing video, if I need to start doing a different area of photography concepts, or maybe meeting new people or leaving the state or whatever it is, I want to try to see if I can get that void filled as soon as possible. And I think the next step for me was always going into almost like video, if anything. I started to dabble a little bit in video. That was always another leap of faith for me, which was also another challenging aspect for me, because it was during COVID, I really wasn't shooting people at all, but I needed to feel like I had a purpose in photography. So I needed to start feeling those instances of me questioning whether or not if I have a purpose in photography at all anymore. So I think when you shift, you have to start putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation in order to feel like you really belong in this, or you really feel like this is something that you really feel like is meant for you.
Well, is video in general, are you getting more requests to do both stills and video for your commercial work, your editorial? I mean, you've kind of, I mean, the work that I mainly see now from you is more the editorial fashion
Yeah.
type stuff. Are those clients asking for both video
So,
and still, or
well, I'll
I
give you
mean, they're
some
always asking for you, obviously, right?
Yeah, I'll give you some context. There was a time in my life that I said no to a lot of photography campaigns or like gigs, and I just wanted to say yes to video. Um, because I wanted to see how good, if I'm capable of doing that. And again, this is another aspect of really taking a risk. You don't know what you're good at, but until you go out there and start doing it, you don't know if you have potential to really understand and be better. There came a point that I wanted to like shift my focus into just video. And I wanted to see what equipment do I need to do? How do I get better? So I decided to just start promoting myself as a videographer. Just started shooting content. As I was shooting people, I would do like side gigs on video and post them. Again, just posting them, whether it's on your website, whether it's on your social media platforms, whether it's like with your family and friends, just create something. And that piqued the interest for certain people that wanted video in their campaigns. I think this was way before Reels and way before I think Vine and stuff like that, that I wanted to see what was my potential in that. And as I started to put things out, people really were enjoying what I was putting out, and they wanted to hire me to create the same type of, I guess, like content for them. And so for like almost 2 years, almost 3 years, video was like the primary focus of clients, and photography was like the second. So I was still doing both, but I was making sure that I was giving myself time to work on more video work than actual photo work, because that's the only way I know that I can, if I fit this industry model. Obviously, it got to a point where years came by, I felt like it was there was too many people involved when it comes to video, and that kind of bothered me a little bit. And I kind of stepped back, and I went back to just wanting to reshift myself as like, I don't feel like I'm doing video as my personal work. Now it's more of like, I feel like it's work now. It's not really fun anymore. And so
Gotcha.
I needed to reset again to find out what is it that my purpose is in photography or is in this industry. Is it really, do I need to focus on videography, or do I need to go back and be back into like stills and just working like I used to work with photography? And honestly, this is a moment in time where I needed to figure things out. If, again, questioning yourself whether or not this is meant for you, and if this is your purpose. And as you can see, I don't know if are people seeing what I have up or you having up right now?
Yeah, right. So this was the question I always like to ask is what personal projects do you have any? Do you have personal projects? Do you have any long-term personal projects? And maybe to speak to that a little bit, but also kind of talk a little bit more about your portrait, that you're known for portraits, that process, and how you're adapting that to say your personal work.
From day one that I picked up my camera, all I wanted to shoot was my daughter, capture her faces, capture emotions. And that feeling has been there when I needed to shift again from video and get away from like just like the work aspect of everything, I felt like I did lose my identity in like the main reason why I got into photography. And one of the personal projects that I did that put me back into a purpose of why I love photography was I went back to my homeland in Ecuador, and I went back to my roots, and I went back to connecting with myself where I came from and see if that can give me some answers. And during that time, I stayed with my grandmother for almost a week. She wasn't in the best health situation, and I just wanted to really just feel document her as much as possible because I knew that there weren't a lot of images out there of her. Um, there's not a lot of photographers in my family. There weren't a lot of people taking pictures of her, and I wanted to dedicate this whole project of documenting her, and eventually using them and coming back home and blowing them up into doing like this 1-day gallery show exhibition of just her. And it was such an important thing for me, mainly because I have a lot of family from Ecuador here, cousins, uncles, aunts, that were so glad that I did this for them, for her. Um, and at the end of the day, it wasn't meant um, to be like gallery worthy. It just was a tribute to her. And at the end of the exhibition, I literally handed out all my images. I think it was about a total of 40 of them to my family members. At the end of the day, I brought them all down like weeks later. I brought them to a family event and I told them, take whichever images you feel are can have at home. And they were all gone within that day. And I felt that it's an important memory for my grandmother. She lived to 106. She died a year later after this project. So not only was a very sentimental moment for me, it was a moment that I felt like my grandmother at least witnessed, because while I was here in the US, she was also in bed in Ecuador, and they had FaceTimed her, and they had, they were showing her all this. And it felt like I hope that she felt proud of that aspect. And that for me gave me a whole new reasoning to be in photography, and I think that just made me want to keep that energy and type of passion and purpose in what I do, more in front moving forward than anything else.
All right. That's awesome. And I mean, it's really inspirational, this project, and hearing about it. But we've got, I guess, a few more questions in the chat.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can get to those. So it says here, what does working with film do for you in terms of approach, and do you like working with film?
Yeah, I feel film makes me slow down a lot. Um, I got into film around 2017. Um, I've always, again, I didn't come from photography background. I didn't come from like schooling. I've always loved how, when I had a photo album from when I went to Ecuador, I was looking through photo albums, and you know how you got these images and Polaroids are stuck to like the plastic sheet,
The magnetic,
and then you just got to be so careful
the
with that.
magnetic albums.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it felt like
Uh,
these images are so like so precious that
yeah.
people don't want you to touch them too much, but they're almost like in a photo album. And I felt that if I can sort of like use that as a tangible type of concept, that feeling that I got, I felt like film was that. The images to me when I shot on film were like very soulful. It felt timeless, and it made me remember and all those images that I saw from when I was growing up. I don't have a lot of images of myself growing up, but the ones I do are all on, on photo album papers, those film. And so that for me is more of keeping that history and that nostalgic feeling alive as much as possible. So the more I started shooting film, the more I started to feel like it was part of me putting it out there in the world. So film does do that. Film does make you go slower. Every shot counts.
Mhm.
And you can't, even when there's a mistake, there's a big learning lesson to that. You definitely don't want to create that mistake again, but you don't know it, but you have to be patient. You only know it when it's developed. And I think that's what is the best thing for me when it comes to film. It's just creating these important images in whatever it is, 36 shots or 10 shots, and see if that's all you have. When I got into film and I still was doing digital, it actually made me a better digital photographer. It's like I didn't have to constantly feel like I had to shoot. I just I thought of it as a process of film where you see a perspective, you see an angle, you see how you want to get the shot, you see the lighting, and then you just get that one shot and you move on to the next one. At least that's my process. I always see it as
Right.
like a one shot deal. And I always see it as like, if this shot can be a cover, that's what I want to aim for. If every shot is for me is like that perspective of like, this is the only shot I got. This could be a cover shot. This is what I'm aiming for. And that's what I feel like has put that process in my mind when I'm going out and shooting people or shooting a campaign or shooting any type of project that I have. It's always thinking of like, if I only have one shot, and it helps me filter out the
Wow.
noise and filter out all the extra sort of like, non-important images.
Right. Well, I know we do have an upcoming workshop
Yeah.
with Tutes and the Leica Academy, February 25th. It's a Saturday. There's one spot left. And then we're also planning so that you could check out on our website at leicacamerausa.com, and then just hit the Academy button. But Tutes, and we also have, I guess, another workshop scheduled in July. Also, if you can't make this one, if you're interested in working with Tutes, but can you give people a little bit of an insight of what this workshop is about and what they would expect to experience and learn?
This workshop actually, I'm gonna enjoy doing this workshop because it's very almost one-on-one, and I'm giving you literally access and like experience of how I go about my process of shooting for model agencies or just in models in general. I think that it's giving you an sort of like an understanding of why my images can create such emotion and such feelings with models who've been doing it for like whether 6 months or 10 years, 20 years. um, I think I want to make you understand that it's really about communication and transparency and honesty and just being warm and being understanding and listening outside of the technical aspect of it. These type of like experiences that I've had with in my industry, working with models and working with agency businesses and makeup artists and stylists, I create a bond with these people and I create a good experience with them that they always feel like they've been shot for the first time, if anything. And I think that's very important for me is mm, giving you all the process that I do to make these people really, really feel great at the end of the day when they leave the studio. I think ultimately that is what I want to show. I want to be able to
Mhm.
give this back to whoever participates, all these attendees, and give you some sort of understanding of like, why do people want to work with me? Why do clients really want me to capture them like I capture certain people? It's definitely, a lot of people tell me that there's just something about these images that you capture, these people, that it's hard to explain. And I can't explain it because every model, every person that I shoot with is a different experience. There's no one person is like the other person. There's this the levels of like emotion and like just joy, if anything, creates this, and it leaves with them when they leave that studio or they leave that type of shoot. And I think that for me is more important. I want to be able to just showcase this. That is, it's a value that can't be, you can't put a price on it. Honestly, it just becomes better. It becomes better, and it becomes something that you can't help but to do. You just want to continue to give back to the world, and this is the way that I do it. And I definitely want to share that with as many people as I can.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I'll be there, and we're limiting it to 8 students,
Yeah.
to make sure that everyone gets kind of that one-on-one attention. And just want to bring to your attention also that there's other programs on the Leica Academy that you can look at for portraiture, street photography, food photography. We've got some great workshops up there as well. And our next Leica conversation will be with Catherine Boyd Brolin and Tina Roden. And Catherine is a photographer, actress, and entrepreneur. And Tina is actually a unit photographer for shows that you may have seen on Netflix, like Ozark and Stranger Things. So they'll be chatting with our Vice President of Marketing, Karen Canarney, and it should be a really exciting time. You can scan the QR code on your screen. And again, that'll be Thursday, March 30th at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time, which is hard to believe. It's almost here again, springtime. So again, you have to register via Eventbrite like you did for this talk. So anyone interested, please do that. And just some quick information on Leica Camera USA, Leica Academy, and Tutes. You can follow us all on Instagram, as well as Tutes, which is misspelled his email address, but it's tutes.nyc. NYC is not a misprint. And that's also his website is tutes.nyc. So Tutes, thanks very much for today. It was an enjoyable experience, enjoyable talk, a lot of great information about kind of your process and all the things that you do and that you've been able to accomplish in seemingly a relatively short period of time. And we just so much appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and also to work with us at the Leica Academy. It's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate this. This has been a great experience, and I'm glad to be here.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. And sorry we went over a few minutes, but we hope you had an enjoyable experience. And feel free to reach out to us, and we'll hope to see you next time on the next Leica conversation. Thanks, everybody. Take care.